5.
Yeah, thank you. It's so nice to be here. I want to share Anne's comment and echo it that this is a wonderful group. I always enjoy being here. Thank you very much. So, in my series of talks about the wellness program that you had asked me to share with you, today is one I generally refer to as intuition, or more specifically, we've called today, how do you determine your truth? So I want to start with some very practical answers before getting into maybe some deeper thoughts about the idea that the truth is within you. So when I thought about how do we know what's true, honestly, I think most people rely on their own direct experience. I was there, I heard it, I saw it, I know, right? And I would never want you to discount your personal experience. But I hope you understand the subjectivity of your individual experience and the subjectivity of your recall. And I joke sometimes this is how fish stories get told. So fish starts out a certain size and then has a way of changing. So depending on our experience and our conditioning and our learning, all of us have a different perspective on our experience. So what if, though, and I use the term collective experience, what if, let's say, this entire group, right in front of you, observed the exact same thing, and you agreed on what you saw? Do you think that would be a good way to determine truth? You're shaking your heads. Then I joke, you remember the O.J. Simpson trial? Because our jury system is really based on that very approach, isn't it? We present the facts, ideally, without distorting them, or unfortunately a real bias there as well around trying to just make a certain point of view and support it so that we have a particular outcome. But again, that unfortunately is flawed. It's certainly not foolproof. If anything, it might suggest, and certainly in my training and experience, the role of science. Isn't it the very objective of science to have everything be objectively measurable, to remove these contaminants, these subjective phenomena of any kind, so that we know through objective measurement? But the problem here is, without really creating a whole other lecture, is that it is a method. And because something is or is not objectively measurable does not make it true. And so, especially with a group like this, when we think about very, very important questions like, who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What's it all about? Do you understand? Science cannot answer that question. Not in a way that's really meaningful. And so, even when I remember being interviewed for a book, and people were talking about who you are, or God, or whatever, and I remember saying, you know, science will never be able to determine what God is. Because it's through this objective measurement, we might call left-brain approach to understanding truth, you will never know what this intuitive or more subjective part of your, what I call right brain, will know. So it's not to discount science. I honor science. I think I have demonstrated through doing my own research to try to make a point and prove what's important. But the question then, that certainly is anathema to science, is when, and I come at it through this one story I remember many years ago. I read an article where the Catholic Church was now accepting Galileo back into the fold. I'm glad you can laugh, because it is part of my sense of humor as well, but it's the truth. This really happened, where there was an official announcement made by the Vatican that, and if you remember the story about Galileo, he determined that the Earth was not the center of the Earth was the, excuse me, the Earth was not the center of the universe through objective measurement, and he was excommunicated. But now, the report came that we acknowledge there is a role for science. But of course, it went on to say, the way to determine truth is divine revelation. Yeah, so you can do this, but I want you to think about that. When we think about intuition, maybe not for this group so much, but for many people, I even joke about, and excuse the stereotype, women can be intuitive, and we, I'm going to say, more tolerate that as men, but don't really appreciate it. But then I joke, of course, men have gut feelings. And so it's fun for me to have you think about, you know, is intuition really strange? And really make the point that we use intuition all the time, whether or not we like it or understand it. Because intuition, again, suggests that something is true without any proof, objective proof. So I made a note of some things, just how common intuition is. 65% of Americans report having experienced extrasensory perception. The majority of Americans have reported that. 50% believe their pet dogs respond to their thoughts. For those of you who have pets, you know better. You know it's true. 50% of American adults believe they have been in contact with someone who has died. Usually a spouse or a sibling. 75% of people pray daily looking for spiritual guidance. If you're trained scientifically, that's actually a little spooky. And I even joke that when we pray, we do basically one of two things. We're really telling God what to do, or we're asking for guidance, right? Isn't that really a form of intuition? Almost all artists, writers, composers, and inventors have used intuition in their creative artistic expression. So whether or not you studied this, you know just how common this is. And one example I remember clearly when I was really looking more closely at this is the singer-songwriter Billy Joel. Chances are you recognize it. Billy Joel said he has never written a song that he has not first heard in his dreams. So again, appreciate the role of intuition. And I can say the same for so many artists, which for those of you who have my book, Doctor's Orders Go Fishing, you know that I have a whole chapter with examples of how it's been used historically, including a whole chapter on medical uses of intuition, where we think, well, like, we wouldn't use this in a medical setting. Well, in fact, there are many examples of how it has been indeed used medically. So, one of the things that has stood out for me too, in just trying to determine what's true, and has almost been inescapable, especially having some friends who are shamans, is to appreciate that probably the most practiced approach to spirituality historically has been shamanism. And when I looked up, as best I tried to understand what it is and how it works, the most fundamental approach to shamanism is what they call entering the spirit world. Or sometimes it's called ancestral worship. I like more the term ancestral communication. But even with Native American groups or indigenous groups, it is so, not just extremely common, it's sacred work. It's important. It is about as respected as it can be that you, in fact, could go within, or if you wanted to consult a shaman who is truly trained and experienced at this, enter the spirit world to get guidance and direction in your lives. And more specifically, because of my work, what you need to do to heal. So is that weird? It really isn't weird at all, is it? And then, in fact, when you think about what's objective and what's subjective, if we as humans are here to experience the physical, but in fact we are truly spiritual beings having this special journey, which is subjective and what's objective? So my fascinating experience was, I know that I've shared with some of you, is that when I was first introduced to meditation a long time ago, 50 years or so ago, and began to meditate daily with, really became my mentor, but my best friend, business partner. And we meditated daily, and at some point he began to go into a trance-like state and channel. And thereafter, every day for 7 years, I had that experience of being able to talk with this wisdom who came through my special friend Ken. And for those of you who knew about my workshop most recently, where my great friend now Sharon Bauer channels John the Baptist, what a unique experience to be exposed to something like that and have a conversation, a genuine conversation with the wisdom of someone like John. So I've had a very unique background that way. In fact, it was those coming through my friend Ken who encouraged me to go back to graduate school to get my scientific degrees. And I remember them saying this because it will help you open doors that otherwise will not be open to you, that they believed that would be important to my life. And I'm so grateful that I took that time to do that. It was not a pleasant experience, honestly. But anyhow, I'm glad that it gave me that opportunity to do some of the work I did with cancer specifically. So I made notes here about a special book that I told some of you about, I know, called Voices of Love from the Light, which is channeled messages from some of the best known people who have ever walked this earth. And one of the things that stood out for me, though, and the reason why I'm going to share this with you today, is that there was such a unique, consistent message that came from these 20 special people, including, listen to who was channeled: Kuan Yin, Buddha, Archangel Michael, St. Francis, Black Hawk, Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, Yogananda, Mother Teresa, Eleanor Roosevelt, Jesus, Edgar Cayce, Saint Germain. What do you think was the most consistent message by far that came from all of these people coming through now who wanted to tell us what is absolutely most important?
Love each other. Love.
Love.
Stay in the present moment, the now.
God is within. God is within. So when you think about, and really when you understand this, to me, I don't know if there's something to be more grateful possible in your life. To know that you can look within for guidance and support at any moment. In fact, it was interesting, I shared with you how my intuition works in phrases of songs. So while I was preparing this morning and meditating this morning, even driving down here this morning, the one song that came through that is unusual. I don't often get this one, and it's the song "Stand By Me." Whenever you're in trouble, there's nothing to fear because you know you can stand by me. I want to say more than that, though, is again this idea, not just God is standing with you, you are God. God is within you, God is within everything. And you can access it, because I remember being, again with my more objective training and the way of thinking before being introduced to meditation and intuition was when people say they talk to stones and trees. Really? But again, to be really open and honest with you about, you can do this. You really can. There is huge wisdom in being able to open to the truth that lies within everything. That, most importantly, that you appreciate lies within you. And one of my very favorite books, Conversations with Gods, I wrote down this quote from book 1. I talk to everyone, all the time. The question is not to whom do I talk, but who listens. And so in my little blurb talking about today, I wrote about, that just went right out of my mind. That's when Shelley was sharing with you a story about her memories and how. Okay, I know that it'll come back to me though. But I know what I wanted to lead to as well, because even with my scientific work and working in cancer center so much, the way I liked to do therapy and learned to do therapy and prefer to do therapy now, it was reminded me recently that I need to do this more or make it more known. And some of you ask me, do you do individual work or one-on-one work? And I do indeed. But the point of that is my approach to therapy is, as I say, introducing you to yourself. Is that You and I can be very intelligent and very clever and probably figure this stuff out over time, whatever your concern or interest might be. But I know that by learning to go within and showing you how you can go within, the answer lies within you, what you need to do for you. And so the most common message that I've gotten over the years in trying to help other people, what is the real underlying concern or cause for more, because of my work, physical symptoms and illnesses? And what do you think is the most common thing that comes through you about what you need to do to really be healthier?
Control your thoughts.
Control your thoughts
And feelings.
and feelings.
Love yourself.
Self-love.
That's a good one. But for me, self-love means aligning yourself with the core eternal part of who you are. You can never go wrong with that one. That is absolutely, that's more the message I get so consistently within myself. But for you, it won't surprise you when you hear me say it, and it's so much related to doctor's orders: go fishing. Joy. Have fun. So I don't know you, and yet I know you because of all the people I've worked with, and certainly I've gotten to know some of you well, and I appreciate that. Is you're not so good at having fun. Some of you do beautifully. I'm going to join the hiking group. I really look forward to having fun with you do that. But in general, one of the strongest messages that comes through is that you really need to take more time for yourself to have fun. The other thing is that too often, and I'll give you a couple examples, very brief cases of what happens, and it's being so unduly influenced by trying to fit in and being unduly concerned about what others think. And so I remember my very early internship with Dr. Carl Simonton at his cancer center, and I was a psychologist then, and I was assigned to help a couple of people there. And the one woman who had breast cancer, when we looked more closely, okay, what do you really need to do to heal? The story came out that she was an attorney, and she came from a family of attorneys. It was fascinating how within her extended family there were so many attorneys, and I mean really high-end achiever attorneys, like Supreme Court kind of, state Supreme Court kind of stuff. And within her, for whatever reason, she really felt like she could never measure up. You know, how could she measure up to be and fit in with this group? But subconsciously, not consciously, if I got cancer, no one would expect me to have to achieve to that level.
Wow.
This is real. Another story. A woman had endometriosis and went through all of the medical conventional approaches, including one physician I knew well, and I know he would have handled the situation well, but they weren't able to determine what she really needed to do to heal. So just one individual session with her, it came up that she really didn't want to have children. Her husband, his parents, who would be the grandparents, especially, we really, really want you to have children. And she was young, and she still had many more things to do before she settled down to have children. Subconsciously, not consciously, if she gets endometriosis, she won't have to have children. You can learn to go in. This is very sobering, but you can learn to go in and really look at, what do I really need to do? Not only to be healthy, but to be happy. So again, I'm glad to assist you if any of you are curious, interested in learning more about that. So, I wrote also, now I remember what I said to Ruth about my little blurb for today. And it was about what are the keys to learning to go within and developing your intuition. And it's really this simple, honest. It's your openness and your intention. You know, you can read so much and study so much about meditation, and I would never say don't do that. But in the end, it's all about learning to focus your attention. Sometimes we say get quiet. But just focusing your attention. That's why it's wonderful to have an affirmation that has meaning for you, like I align with love. When Dr. Herb Benson did his early research on meditation at Harvard, he simply had people repeat the word one over and over again, and then progressed into a meaningful affirmation. But in your openness and your intention, that's what it takes. Just like with dreams, they can't wait to bring to your conscious mind what it is you need to do to be happy and healthy. So it's a matter of just doing it. Let's not this one joke. I won't get into the full joke, but how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Good, okay. So it's like anything else. You develop it and you learn. But you can do this. And then one last little story. When I had my workshop recently with Sharon Bauer and John the Baptist, I did numbers of intuitive exercises, and for fun, the last one I did was I asked everybody to pick a number between 1 and 100. Intuitively, go inside and pick a number from 1 to 100. And we had a group of about 20 people. Would you, just real odds, real objective, rational odds, how many people would you expect to guess the right number out of 100? 1 to 100. I don't know if you did the real figuring of that. But the odds aren't good, right? 2 people guess the exact number.
Wow.
So for fun, because I wanted to make it fun, is they didn't know I brought one of my driftwood birdhouses, so if anybody got the exact number, so I actually had to give up 2 birdhouses, but I was so glad. I was so glad to do it because it reminds me and it reminds you. It is still affirming to me. You can do this. You can do this. Thank you.